Today, let's look at how we can make your webinars better by using webinar polls and engagement tools. Your ability to engage your webinar presenters, to get them involved in your webinars, is critical to the success of webinars. That's what all top quality webinar presenters learn, that getting people engaged and involved and maintaining that engagement is critical to success. And all of this month I've been presenting videos about webinar engagement. Today's video is number 4 in the series. You can see links to the others below. But in today's video, we're going to focus on polls and engagement tools. We did talk about chat in the previous 2 videos, but today it's all about polls and the other engagement tools you can use to create better webinars. And there's 8 things we're going to talk about. So stay tuned for some nuggets. Let's go. Let's kick this video off by talking about polls. Now, polls are in the title of today's video for a reason. They are very good at re-establishing engagement if it starts to wander. So let me set the scene. You're presenting a webinar, you've been talking for a while, yak, and people have started to drift off. They've started to check Facebook. They've started to have a look at that magazine on their bench. They've started to answer some emails. You can get them back very quickly. The secret is the mighty poll. There is nothing more powerful in returning people back and getting their focus straight back on your webinar like that than a poll. But the trick is, and this is where a lot of people go wrong, they don't announce the poll. You have to be very deliberate in announcing the poll and encouraging people to participate in the poll. Be very intentional about doing that. And it's interesting, especially if you've got engagement stats that you can see in your webinar that you can view either during the webinar or afterwards, how quickly people return if you announce a poll and if you run an engaging, interesting poll. So I could wax lyrical all day long about how to use polls. I'm sure I'll do that in a future video. But for today, just accept this. If you want people to be engaged in your webinars, use polls. The second of the 8 tools we're going to talk about today is the hands up feature. Now, many webinar systems don't have a hands up feature, but if you have one, ding ding, you're in good shape. It's a very simple feature where there's a button there where people can raise their hand. They press it, you get feedback straight away. Very quick, very easy. One of the tricks to the hands up feature though is to tell people where it is and where to find it during the pre-webinar. So before you actually start the webinar, as people are coming on board, introduce them to the control panel or dashboard of your webinar software and tell them where that hands up feature is and let them know that you'll be using that during the webinar. That way, when you ask people to put their hands up, they can do it quickly. And hands up can be used for a variety of different reasons. You can check the technology. Is the technology work? Please put your hand up. Let me know. Can you hear me okay? Can you see me okay? Can you see my slides? Please put your hands up. It's very quick and easy. And often you can put everyone's hands down as well, so you don't have to be nervous about people having left their hands up. One of the ways I use hands up a lot in my webinars as well is to ask people if they want to say something on the microphone. So if you've got access for them to share microphone or video with you, just ask people to raise their hand at any stage during the webinar so you know that they've got something to say. And that makes it really easy to spot that in as compared to seeing those types of messages within a chat. You can also ask for yes/no questions during the webinar. Okay, so who's tried this at home before? Who's done this strategy? Who's used it? Could you put your hand up and let me know? Let you put your hand up for a yes, leave your hand down for a no. And you can use the hands up feature lots of times during a webinar. It takes no time at all and keeps people engaged in your webinar, and you're getting great feedback as well. It's a winner in all respects. Now, the third type of tool that you can use during webinars to maintain engagement is activities. And I've got a couple of ideas here for you. One is you can ask people to do an activity before the webinar commences. So if there's some learning or research that would be helpful for people to have a look at or have a think about to get them in the right frame of mind and with the prerequisite level of understanding before the webinar, then give it to them as an activity before the webinar. Email it out or make it downloadable as they register for the webinar. Get people to do that then, and then everyone is going to be on that level playing field as they come into the webinar. Also, it's just a time saver during the webinar. Another type of activity you can get people to participate in is to give them a PDF booklet or even a Microsoft Word document where there's blanks, and get them to fill in the blanks as they move through the webinar. Now, for people who are kinesthetic, that's a big word, or tactile learners who like to play with things, who like to use their hands when they're participating in training, this is golden. And they can write down answers and write out notes that you've taken the time to pre-prepare for them, just with some blanks, and that's magical. They will love you that you've taken the time for that. Some people won't care for it too much, and that's okay, but I think they'll respect the effort that you've gone to in doing that in advance of the webinar. Also, breakout rooms are another great strategy. So for some webinar software, they offer the opportunity for breakout rooms where you can split your webinar into different groups, and then they can do short activities amongst those groups, which creates a lot of engagement and a lot of enthusiasm within those groups. Then you pull everyone back together. Now, at the stage of recording this video, there are not very many webinar systems that facilitate that, but I think that will be a growth area in future years. Also, an offer button is a great idea. Number 5, offer button. Now, it's something that's not used terribly much. A lot of webinar systems don't have an offer button, but if you have one, you can use it for a variety of purposes. Most often it's used to create the sale. So if you're at a webinar where you're selling something, you pop up that offer button, click here to take up the offer, people will go to your sales page and they'll be able to purchase whatever product you're offering. That's pretty good, and that's straightforward and obviously critical if you're having a sales webinar. But if you're not having a sales webinar, you can still use the offer button. You might get people to click that button to go to another one of your resources, or to go and to make a commitment to something else, perhaps to watch another one of your webinars, whether it's a paid webinar or a free webinar. They can sign up for your next webinar during the webinar by using that offer button. How cool and easy is that? If they don't want to do that, then the chances are that you need to up your game somehow in the way you're presenting your webinar, or maybe it's not aligned to their needs. Moving forward, video is a great tactic, another tool that you can use during webinars. So run a video during your webinar. Again, make absolutely sure that your webinar software can accommodate that. Many of the software systems currently on offer don't run videos effectively. And even if they say they do, test it. Trial it, practice it. Make sure that you're not going to have a problem running that video during your session. Surveys are also fantastic. Now, typically a lot of webinar presenters will use surveys to get feedback about the webinar, which is great. And I want to encourage you to do that. It makes no sense to me to let your participants escape without a survey. Get a survey in their hands, and some of the webinar systems allow the survey to even pop up automatically at the end of the webinar, or to go out with the thank you and follow-up email. In either case, have a survey, get feedback about your webinar so you know what to improve for the future. But in addition to that, by sending out that survey, you're re-engaging the participants you had in that webinar. You're reminding them about that webinar, and for some of them, that will be a call to action to take a follow-up step after your webinar. So it's very valuable to have that survey and to use it to your advantage and to help create better learning and more engagement for your webinar presenters. For your webinar participants. And finally, and this is a little bit out the box, don't hesitate to send your webinar participants offline. Number 8 in our 8 tools today is offline. Nothing to do with the webinar. Send people offline to do some research, or maybe look at some references about the topic that you covered today. And it's interesting because as soon as they go and start doing that research, and as soon as they start looking at those references, they will remember your webinar. It's a way of reminding people about the webinar and the content you covered, and perhaps indirectly reminding them about how they can participate with you again at a future webinar or another action step that you might have asked them to take. So don't hesitate to offer references and resources that your webinar participants can go and study offline, either during or after the webinar. There you go, 8 strategies on how, and 8 tools on how you can create better engagement in your webinar using polls and a variety of options.
Is it just me, or is this a little bit boring so far?
If you're a regular of these videos, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. But today I want to tell you about something that's not video content. You sometimes wish when you're in the car or on the gym or in the shower that you wish you had something to listen to so you could learn about webinars more effectively. If you're a webinar fanatic like I am and you want to get the chance to take advantage of those opportunities to do more learning, then there's a podcast for you, the Webinar Skills Podcast, hosted by yours truly. And I'm very excited about the Webinar Skills Podcast. It's only just been recently released and it's going great. So if you want the chance to listen to top class webinar presenters like John Lee Dumas, like Rick Mulready, like Joe Daniel, like George Cow and Kate Erickson, then tune into the Webinar Skills Podcast. You'll find it on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. Search for it, Webinar Skills Podcast, or click the link below to go to the Webinar Skills Podcast. Please have a listen to one of the episodes. I hope you love it. Thank you for watching today's video. I never ever take it for granted, so thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. If you got some comments or feedback about the content we've covered today, if I missed an engagement strategy or a tool that you think is magical, please pop down below and pop it in the comments for this video. I'll greatly appreciate your comments. In either case, please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, and have an awesome day. Welcome to Webinar Chat 101. Today's video is the second in the series about webinar engagement. Now, if you take experienced webinar presenters and ask them what's their top